Hello, hello. Welcome to the A Game of Tomes explainer video. This is for those of you who are either new to the game or the last time you checked on the rules was when I started this series all the way back when. This is a overview of the board, the cards, the rules, all that good stuff. First things first though, someone did ask me to make some material available online for those that want to play along at home. So down below there is a Google Doc that has a digital version of the board, all the cards, and all of the rules, as well as a cheat sheet for you if you do want to play at home. Also, if you don't want to sit through a whole video, there is all of the rules, like I said, in that Google Doc, so you can just read up on it, refresh yourself on what the spaces are. But for those of you who like a little visual guide, here it is. This is my TBR game. It's called A Game of Tomes. I made it myself. I was greatly inspired by G at Book Roast, who made her own game, because a lot of people had made TBR games that were inspired directly by existing board games. And I kind of, you know, it's been done. I don't want to like steal anyone's idea and use an existing board game. And G had done one based on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it was a completely original game, and I thought that was so smart. So I toiled and toiled for months and finally came up with A Game of Tomes, which is inspired by the A Song of Ice and Fire series. Basically, my goal with this game is to make my way across the board, starting from the bottom all the way to the top here. This end here is the Iron Throne, and I reward myself with a little book haul. Do I follow that very closely? No, but it kind of makes it a little fun to have a little treat at the end. Basic gameplay is just rolling the dice and moving a little token across the board, but each space corresponds with either a card or a prompt, and I'll go over those in a second. All you really need to know though is that it is inspired by the characters and places of A Song of Ice and Fire, but really it's just prompts to go with them. It's just a kind of a fun, almost like a little mini readathon for myself. So we'll start by going over the spaces that correspond with houses, and I'll tell you what all the prompts are for those. Then we'll move into the cards, and then we'll go over the special spaces. So there is a space on the board for each of the major 6 houses that we see a lot in the series. So first and foremost here we have House Tyrell, which corresponds to nonfiction books. If I land on the space, I just have to read a nonfiction book. The next one I see here is Lannister. House Lannister corresponds to horror, thriller, mystery, anything that kind of falls into that subcategory. So again, if I land on that space, I just have to pick a book in that genre. Next I have House Baratheon. The prompt for House Baratheon is just to read a classic. Again, kind of broad. I can do genre classic or I can do a true classic. I usually try to make them true classics, but it can be up for interpretation. House Tully, I'll come back to in a second. Got House Targaryen, which is just to read a fantasy. House Stark, the prompt is just to reread any book. Who's next? We got House Martell, which is a free pick. Can read anything I want, which is always a nice pick. So the last one other than Tully is Greyjoy, and the prompt for Greyjoy is just to read a sci-fi. So the reason I'm doing Tully last is that it's not directly related to a genre. It's more that I have to pick a prompt out of a little jar. So obviously when I was making the game, I had a ton of other prompts that I maybe wanted to do, but they just didn't fit within the confines of the cards or the board. So I've been just writing them on Post-its and putting them in the jar, and I just pick from the jar. Surprisingly, we've gotten this one a lot so far in the game. But it's always fun because I can also always add or take out prompts that no longer fit my reading style. So this is always a fun one. Now that we've been over the houses, let's do the cards. So for the 4 types of cards in this game, we've got character cards, we've got location cards, we've got raven cards, and we've got battle cards. And here are all the cards. I did make these myself. So for the character cards, it is basically a list of characters along with some quotes that people have either said about that character or coming directly from the character themselves. So there's a decent stack of these, and these are just general prompts. These do not have to be books I own. These do not have to be any kind of specific parameter. Like, these are just general prompts. So here's what the back of those looks like. And then here's what the actual face of them looks like. So as you can see here, we've got Littlefinger. We've got his quote here at the bottom, which says, "You are slow to learn, Lord Eddard. Distrusting me was the worst thing you've done since you climbed down off your horse." And then we have the prompt. And so for Littlefinger, the prompt is to read a book featuring a game or a competition of some kind. There are a absolute ton of these. We get these quite often, but they're fun. I like kind of being reminded of characters I love from the series. Next, we have our location cards. Here they are. So these all feature iconic locations from around the world of Ice and Fire. So whereas the character cards were just broad prompts, I could use any book to fulfill them, location cards correspond only to books on my owned TBR. I always keep a fairly large owned TBR, so this is to kind of inspire me to, not inspire even, it's kind of force me to really pick books off of that. So here's what those look like, and then the face of it. So as you can see, this one is for High Garden, and here's the prompt, and the prompt is just to read a book with nature on the cover. These are obviously like fairly vague. The point is that they're up for interpretation. They're supposed to just make me kind of direct my reading a little bit. I'm definitely a mood reader, but this is kind of a fun way to narrow down specifically what I'm reading. So the next cards are the Raven cards. In the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, there is a saying that dark wings carry dark words, and so these are all more negative prompts. I typically would pick one of these as a punishment if I didn't complete my TBR, or I can actually land on the space on the board as well, and they're just kind of chaotic. Definitely like not great prompts. So we've got, you know, read a book from a series you didn't want to continue, read a book that you put down and said you'd come back to later but didn't, read a book from an author you dislike, you know, find someone's worst books video and read that. So here's what the front of those look like, and that's the face. And so you can see this one says add another roll, that's the prompt, and then on the bottom I put dark wings, dark words. And the truly most chaotic cards in the entire game are the battle cards. So these took a while to like figure out how I wanted them to work, but essentially the point of these is to add an element of unpredictability, as battles are unpredictable often. So there's kind of a little bit of everything, either things that I have to action right away, so based on the completion of the previous month's TBR perhaps, or just how did I like the last book I read, that kind of stuff. But there's also some that I have to action and then move based on the result the next time I play. So I will do one that I had earlier in 2024. So that's what the card looks like. And then the front, so you can see here, it was a random Instagram pic. So I would just go on my Bookstagram account, and the first book that I saw, or at the very least the first photo that I saw, even if it had a few books in it, I had to read either that book or one of the books in those photos. And then underneath the actual prompt, you can see there are a few options here. So I would have to read the book that I find through Instagram, and then based on whether I liked it or not, I move forward or backwards the next time I play the game. So if I liked it, I get to move up. I either move up the amount prescribed on the card, or I use the dotted lines depending on where I land. So say I landed here last time and it was, you know, the last roll, and that's where I ended up, and then I liked the book, I get to just move up across this line instead of moving up 4, because it's kind of, they're linked. Needlessly complicated, I know, but it works. If I felt neutral about the book, I would just stay put, and if I disliked it, I would move backwards. And so these are just there to introduce a little element of chaos. I think they're fun. Needlessly complicated? Yeah, obviously, but that's the fun of it. Now, there are 2 other spaces on the board that don't correspond with either houses or cards, and I'll show them to you right now. So the first one's down here. It's a little boat, and basically if I land here, I just get to move up, you know, I find myself a ship and I get closer to sitting on the Iron Throne, nothing crazy. And the second one is right here. It's this little coin purse, and if I land there, all that means is that I get to buy myself some books. It's meant to just be a little reprieve from all the prompts. I just get to buy myself some books, and that's always welcome. Now, the beauty of this game is that you don't have to play it any specific way. If you want to make yourself a set TBR, you can make yourself a set TBR for the month or for a readathon, whatever. If you want to roll as you go, as you finish books, you can do that. At some point during a reading slump in mid-2024, I was just shuffling all the cards and picking something because I just did not know for the life of me what I wanted to read. And since all the cards have prompts, it just forces me to follow that prompt. So you can do whatever you want. Like I said, you now have access to the cards and the board. I fully digitized the board, so you can always just go there. You don't have to follow my prompts either. This is just for my reading. This is based on what I tend to read. And so it's totally like customizable. I just picked prompts that went with either the characters or that I thought fit with the houses and the locations. Like, it's completely arbitrary, completely customizable if you would prefer to play this your way with genres that you read, or, you know, with the type of books that you read. It's completely up to you if you are choosing to play along at home. But yeah, that's it. It's not that complicated. That's the game, that's the board. If you like watching old ones, because it is kind of fun to see what happens, I do have the playlist link down below with the entirety of every single round I have played. So if you're interested in that, that is down there. And in 2025, so I am filming this a little bit ahead of 2025 when I've taken a bit of a break from the game, but I will be definitely playing more regularly, so keep your eye out for that if you enjoy this. It's always a little bit of chaos and unpredictability, but it's always fun. So I hope to see you there.